Well, hello, my beautiful friend, and welcome again to what are we in number seven? Oh
Seven for
my,
this year, I think eight overall. Yeah.
yeah. So July already. Pretty
Yes.
excited. One of my dearest archangels is coming through today, which we haven't experienced in our life.
Not
Um,
yet.
have you worked with Archangel Gabriel at all before?
Um, yes and no. Yes, generally, not so much specifically. So there was a period earlier in this year when I felt, I'm going to say him because he came
Yeah.
as a masculine presence, very strongly, and he's the messenger archangel, and it was I was receiving a throat activation.
Yeah.
And I got Archangel Gabriel cards from Doreen Virtue, and they're old cards, and she always depicted Archangel Gabriel as a female. And those cards fell down, like it was a message that, Archangel Gabriel was trying to get my attention. And then I pulled the Archangel Gabriel cards from Stuart Pearce's deck, and Stuart Pearce talks about him with a masculine energy, as a masculine energy. And I just felt I had to sit down. Basically, I had to sit down and meditate with Archangel Gabriel so I can receive voice activation. So that was the first time I really felt that I had Archangel Gabriel had taken over in a sense and working with me in that way. Previously, I felt connected to his energy, probably more in the feminine sense, when I was connecting to my writing, when I first began writing on social media, in my posts, and really was connected with the idea of Archangel Gabriel as being the messenger archangel and helping with me, I suppose writing messages, whether it was messages from the divine or just, in my posts. So I have, in that sense, I don't often sense Archangel Gabriel as a singular energy in the energy work that I've done, but I generally do call in the archangels, and sometimes he, she, they come through, and like individually, as in like I can sense them as a more singular energy, singled out from the rest of that symphony of light as it comes through. So I can't say I have the relationship like I have with Archangel Michael, say, or Archangel Raphael. So I'm really curious to see not only what's going to come through, but why they've chosen to come through today.
I have a pretty good feeling why.
Yes. And I know you say you've got a really strong connection with them, and perhaps that's part of the reason why they're coming too. So I don't know if you want to share about that.
Well, I think first of all, I just want to let everyone know that we do have the keepers coming through, as we always do, our trusted friends and our sort of people that the crew that holds the container of everything that we do on this Soul Sisters channeling.
Yes.
And also Ariavea, your Andromedan guides are coming today. And then, of course, as we said, Archangel Gabriel. But I first encountered Gabriel when I went through my awakening about 5 years ago, and I hit my rock bottom, went through my awakening and thought, well, what else is there in the world? And next thing I was presented with these three magical angels kept coming into my life, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to investigate angels more. And that was, of course, my trusted guide, Archangel Michael, who's with me all the time, and then Archangel Raphael and Archangel Gabriel, and
a powerful trinity.
Yeah, and I also sense Gabriel as masculine sometimes and feminine other times. So that's something I really want to probably bring into our conversation today.
Yes.
That sensing of how we do tend to pick the both sides of that balancing point.
Yes.
And the reason for that, whereas others you sort of feel more of a masculine energy or a feminine energy, but for Gabrielle, it can go either way depending on the communication. But yeah, very, very attracted to Gabrielle. So I'm really excited to have them all here today. It's just so much fun doing these every month. Yes. And I'm very interested to see which way it goes. I have a feeling it's going to go a certain way today, but we'll just see. The keepers always set us up for success.
They do.
I myself have hardly done any preparation.
Yep.
Because I just know that we're in great hands, and I know that my higher self and my guides are there supporting me as well as yours is supporting you.
Yes.
So I just feel when the keepers come through, I think I'll probably bring up a bit more about some of the posts that they've been doing with you through Blue Volcano.
Yes. Sure.
And I've actually written down a few dates that are kind of leading this towards, and I'm thinking on my note, I just quickly wrote, I think today could be around the sanctity of our bodies and our freedom to communicate.
I love that.
So that's the feeling I was getting, and the thoughts that were coming through in my life experiences over the last few weeks all are embodied in that.
Yes.
So whenever you're ready, I think we could turn it over and let's see what the keepers of the keys have got to say, and see if they like that sanctity of our bodies and freedom to communicate.
I'm sure they'll have a comment about it, but let me say there's something that I wanted to share with everyone. Whenever we're connecting with a particular energy, a particular guide, a group of guides or angels, so forth, that everyone's experience may be varied and individual, and it'd be interesting, bringing this up, how we speak about Archangel Gabriel's, our experiences with them have been varied. And so I think how they interact with you would depend on what you are needing at that time. And so I don't want to take from anyone else's experience with these divine beings in any way, shape or form. So it's how they're flowing at this time through me for a particular purpose. And so in transmitting their energy and their messages. So I know I've said before, it feels like I'm dipping my big toe into their energy, and their energy is vast. And it's about allowing that energy to flow through me. And so therefore then I'm transmitting translating what they're transmitting to me. So I want to say that basically it's opening up for another level of connection to them, and anyone can connect to them. So I don't want anyone to see me as either claiming that, you're
the one and only that can channel.
I'm the only conduit. That's not it at all. And also I don't want anyone claiming me feeling as if I'm claiming that this is their word and no one else's word. With anything that comes through, it's if people can just sit with what resonates for them, and then you're welcome to leave the rest. And sure, if you want to reflect on that, because sometimes we're not ready for a particular truth. Other times we've already gone beyond, we've transcended that truth. And for us to ultimately connect to the one truth or the divine truth, we have to be familiar with what is true for us. And I think that may evolve until we get to that one truth, but that will only reveal itself to us as we evolve in our truth. So I just wanted to lay that premise, because I'm not sure if we've done that before. I know I myself say, and the keepers always say, don't give your power away to us. Allow this to be an experience, and if it gives something to you that's positive, then that's what you can take away from that. And that's what we hope that in sharing these conversations that people will take away from this, a positive experience or an insight or a healing sometimes, or certainly a chance to attune or connect to their energy.
And I think that reflects back to our sovereignty too. We have the right to choose, and we get to use our discernment.
Exactly.
So if it feels good, go with it. And if it doesn't,
exactly.
And for me also, I know that I can go back over something from a year ago that we may have done when we've connected, and and I wouldn't have heard that, or I don't remember hearing that. And go, oh wow, that applies now.
Yes, exactly.
But it was from a year ago.
Yes.
And and like you say, other things I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get that. I've been through that.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was great, a great reminder. So
yes.
Thank you very much, Vicky.
No, you're welcome. I thought, I just wanted to be clear in how people receive these channelings, and I hope people enjoy them and benefit from them. And that's why we're sharing this in a public way.
Well, I think we have got the angel of communication. So I think that's a great way to lay a basis of clear communication right at the beginning.
It is really, it really is. And certainly I've never channeled Archangel Gabriel before. So I was almost kind of surprised, even a little bit shocked that they wanted to come through. So my sense is that it'll be the keepers first, as always, then Ariavea, and then Archangel Gabriel.
That's how I'm feeling it too.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, I'll have a sip of water and I'll bring through the keepers.
Wonderful. I'll do the same. Hello and welcome.
Welcome, dear one, and shall we say welcome, dear ones, to each one of you and all to this channeled, let's just call it a conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that.
Good. We're glad you do. Now you have a proposal for us.
Yes.
Describing this conversation today.
Yeah, I just been looking at the posts that you've been doing with Vicky through Blue Volcano, and what's going on around us, what's going on in my life.
Yes.
And it's all around communication and the sovereignty of our bodies. So I come up with the term of sanctity of our bodies and freedom to communicate as a container for us to have our conversation in today. What do you think?
We are happy with that proposal.
Wonderful.
Though it will be a broad theme, and let us say we'll weave in and out of this, but you'll see the connection as it relates to all of that. And we feel that these are both important areas to be exploring, and they are certainly coming up very much in your consciousness, both collectively as well as individually. And there are many things, and we know why Archangel Gabriel has chosen to come through today. When you're looking at that freedom of expression, that freedom of communication, being the messenger archangel, and they have a very particular purpose in coming through today. Yeah,
wonderful.
Yes.
I'm very excited. I'm excited all the time when we get together for these conversations, but yeah.
Yes. So let us begin and lay a basis, and we'll just open from where we are seeing what will unfold today and what energy and information is wanting to come through, and given what you have laid the basis for in terms of the parameters of this discussion. And let us say we're not bound by these parameters, but we are contained by it in a loving way. Yes. And so when you can understand what is unfolding in the collective consciousness, you may say that things are occurring in a particular nation and say, well, that is far from me and doesn't apply to me. What affects one affects the all. And it has really raised things in the collective consciousness. So let us talk about the sanctity of the body to begin with. In the sanctity of the body, there are many layers to this conversation, and we are eager to explore all of them. And when we can understand, you have had the discussion of abortion rights come up very prevalently in the past month. And as you rightly identified, the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the United States by the Supreme Court occurred the day after you recorded the previous channeling conversation. So while it's been a month since that occurred, there is still a lot that is unfolding in relation to that, in relation to the sanctity of the bodies. So we will unpack into the minutiae of some of this, as well as paint the broad picture. So let us begin with the broad picture. In the broad picture, you transmit your souls into your bodies. Your bodies hold your multidimensional DNA, and that multidimensional DNA interfaces with your soul. Your bodies could not survive without the soul. Without the multidimensional DNA, you could not hold the divine blueprint that you were born with in your physical realities.
Yeah.
It is the container for all that you are in this physical lifetime, but also the container of all that you can be. When the saying is, your body is a temple, can you understand, dear ones, that your soul is a spark of the divine, and the body anchors the soul into the physical reality? Of course, your body is a temple, because it holds that which is divine, that which is holy. So for you to not have sanctity of your bodies in any way, shape, or form means that there's an impingement upon your soul expression and your soul freedom. So here comes the other thing. How can you express freely your life when you don't have free choices over it?
Yeah.
So let us use the example of abortion rights. Let us say someone is, whether they are a teenager, whether they are a young adult or an older adult, and are able to fall pregnant and carry a child. Now, the choices that individual may make in that moment about whether to carry to term, to birth a child, is life-changing. It changes the course of your life. It may affect whether you can complete your education. It will certainly affect career and work. It will certainly affect the degree of energy output that is required, even just for the pregnancy itself, let alone the raising of children. On top of that, even if they were to agree to carry to term, but then agree to give up for adoption, that is still something they would carry for the rest of their lives. You are forever changed by any pregnancy and birth. Now, to have those very basic choices about what you would do with your life taken away from you erodes the very basis of bodily sanctity. Whether you choose to be a parent, a mother, is one of the biggest decisions that you could make, a personal one, a very personal one. So here you have the interference of government upon the individual. And what we see is very interesting. We see a dichotomy. We have the same people who purport to allow freedoms to business and economies, the ones who want to impinge and infringe upon bodily freedoms. So those who allow free markets to run rampant without regulation, and who therefore would exploit workers, are the same people who are saying we must regulate people's bodies. This is a dichotomy that is paradoxical, certainly. Imbalance, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And does not support the growth and the freedom of any individual within that society and culture. And there's much that we can still continue to speak of in terms of the soul coming into whether an embryo, whether a fetus, whether a baby. If people want to discuss what some may call their moral issue.
Yep.
What we would say, and it may be ironic to have what you would call a group of angels speak to you about separating church and state, religion and government. The freedom to exercise your spirituality, your religion, is another fundamental right. So ultimately, they are imposing their own religious beliefs upon others. So it is an intertwining of the individual freedom and how that interplays with the broader collective. Now, we have spoken previously in all the other conversations that we've had also about community and how there must be collective responsibility as well as individual freedoms.
Yep.
What we see here is not collective responsibility, but collective control. So this is the opposite of what we are meaning.
Yeah.
Generally, when you say that you're born into a particular nation, into a particular culture, into a particular society, it's because you have agreed on a soul level to exchange within that context. For some people, it means that they will remain in that society, nation, and culture for the rest of their lives. For others, it is just a platform to begin with.
Yeah.
Now, anytime that an individual interfaces with their government, you do this when you drive on the roads, when you receive medical care, when you send your children to school, when you register your vehicles. In other words, there are many interfaces that you may have with government. Government is there to serve you. It is there to serve you. Now, and there is an exchange for that service. You pay your taxes, and in return, you receive these services. Because individually, you could not create a road, you could not build a hospital, and you could not build a school. Now, for some may go, actually, I could. Well, if that is for you, we encourage you, dear ones, because there are some who are here to bring in new paradigms. But let us say broadly, not each individual person is going to do that. You may choose to homeschool your children. That is a choice. Even in the homeschooling, there's an interface with the government because there are regulations about what is to be taught.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So it is about the degree to which the government is involved in your life and in your choices. And so in this case, this is certainly an overreach. And we would go so far as not to just call it an overreach, by a violation.
Yeah, I totally agree. Violation.
It is one of the biggest boundary violations that you could possibly have. To be told that you must carry a child to term. In other words, to do something to your body that will change it forevermore and will change your life forevermore is a violation. When it is freely chosen, it is a blessing. When it is involuntary, it is a curse. Now, can it be turned into a blessing? Not directly, because the beginnings will be. And this is something that the child will hold and carry. The energy of the beginnings will be.
Of not being wanted, or?
Yes. Of being forced to. And that is a form of slavery. Because that labor, and we don't necessarily only mean the birthing labor, the labor of women and those who can birth, to carry in their bodies a child for 9 months is one of the greatest expenditures of energy your body can ever undergo. And then the labor of whether breastfeeding or bottle feeding, of caring for that child for years to come. That is labor. And in the way your societies are structured, you're not paid for that labor. It's unpaid labor. Yet it supports the continuation of your societies and cultures. And so here you are forced into labor, pun intended, against your will. And not only are you forced into labor that is unpaid, you are going to, in most circumstances, receive a drop in income and capacity to work. Now, the other biggest irony is that this is occurring in a nation which has some of the poorest childcare facilities and supports on a welfare level, on a parental leave level, in a workers' rights level, on just about every level conceivable of any developed nation. So the way you care for your children is a marker of your society. That it has been forced into a dichotomy issue of either pro-choice or pro-life. We wouldn't even call it pro-life. It's caring for a group of cells that could potentially become a child, but potentials only. And yet there is no care for that child once born. There is no care whether the child lives in poverty. There's no care whether that child needs to go through live shooter drills because of lax gun laws. And you see the irony in allowing freedoms to bear arms, but no freedoms of the body.
Yeah. Yes, scary moment in our time.
Yes. And it may seem like, why is this coming up when you are both living in Australia and you may access that if you wanted to, and not even an issue in your life at this time. As we said, it raises it in the collective consciousness. And so in the collective consciousness, there's now a greater awareness of body freedoms and the sanctity of the body. And that goes fundamentally to your personal power. And so this is the tie-in with the freedom of expression, because your voice is your power.
Definitely.
Without your voice, you have no power. So another way to phrase the themes of the day is looking at personal power, but we are looking at specifically at these two ends, expression and bodily sanctity.
And I look at it as it might be happening in another country, but that country is sort of like an expression of what's going on and can spread right across this planet.
Yes.
And it's also like, what else can they change? How far can this go? Is it going to spread to undoing of same-sex marriages, or where else is this going to go with take away from bodily rights, then personal rights? And
yes.
And I think it's just like you hear in the spiritual community a lot of this dark force, light forces, stuff like now. Yes. And I think it really is those dark forces just trying to scramble for that last bit of control, because they're feeling the loss.
Yes, it is control. Let us speak to that. When it comes to the United States, can they look to spread this control in other areas like same-sex marriage? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they are actively trying to do that.
Yeah.
Will that spread necessarily beyond the United States? No.
Okay.
But it is a reminder to all to be vigilant about your freedom. We would say look to many nations in Europe who are world leaders in terms of human rights, because this is a human rights issue.
Yeah.
And we spoke last time saying about what is the best indicator of seeing changes into the consciousness of love within a society. And we spoke and we said it is about affording the human rights for all, for every single person in every single way. And so this is exactly pertinent to that. For we could see what was coming. Yet in many countries in Europe, as we said, they are world leaders. Now, there are pockets around the world also, but as a collective, they are doing better than other places in the world. And they have abortion rights, and they have generous parental leave rights, workers' rights, and supports for children and families and communities. Now, it is not to say that every nation within Europe has this, but as a collective, they're doing better than most, as we said. So it is more family-friendly, more child-friendly. In our message today, and today is Thursday, 21st of July, we said with the Council of Light that the way a society treats its children is a measure of that society. And to look at how you treat your children is to look at how you treat the people around those children. For those children depend on those people around them. So the environment that they're in, the schools that they go to, the neighborhoods and communities they belong to, the housing they are able to access. whether they can even be fed. There's a formula shortage in the United States as we speak. And some of that is because of corporate greed. The rampant freedoms afforded to economies and organizations and businesses that are not afforded to individuals. And so this indicates why some regulations are necessary. And what prevents further regulation within the United States, as an example, is a hangover from the Cold War.
Okay, yeah.
And we spoke about imperialist energies and tendencies. And when we spoke about United States and Russia as being two of those examples of those imperialist tendencies, and when you have one nation condemning that or the other and saying they're commies, they then therefore look at anything that is welfare-based, and let us say supporting the welfare of people, because that term has now got a connotation around the world as being poorly, as taking advantage of government, as being disadvantaged, when instead it should be how everyone is supported with their fundamental needs. So that term welfare is then looked upon as a commie plot. So there's an old paranoia about that being something to do with communism when it really does not. When Maslow brought through his hierarchy of needs, it was he was inspired by the First Nations people in Canada, a group of them there. And yet he changed the order around. Whereas he had self-actualization at the top of the pyramid, they had it at the bottom, because fundamental basic needs like food, clothing, and shelter were guaranteed by the community as something that is provided. So can you imagine coming in to a culture that supports your self-actualization as the very first thing, because you are coming into your bodies already having the potentials for all your self-actualization? That's what you are born to do. Whereas Western cultures will have you fight and struggle for your basic needs, so it keeps you away from your self-actualization. That is the ultimate control. It is the ultimate control. Because if you're too busy fighting for your survival, how can you self-actualize?
And I see that, like when I was living out in the world, at like in rich communities, like the Aboriginal communities there were just like, whoever had the money, if someone needed it to go and get food or fuel or whatever, they paid. So it was like, it was the community's money, like with, they had their own groups. But they all overlapped and supported each other for those basic fundamental, needs that they had. And it was really refreshing to see. And big shout out to all my friends out there to see community like, well, I've got money this week, I've got my pay this week, here's this money. And, some people were on fortnightly income, some were monthly, whatever it was. And it was just shared around to whoever needed it at the time. And it just flowed backwards and forth. And everybody got their food and everything they needed.
That is a good example. And when you can see whole cultures and societies organized in that way, how does that change everything? Where children feel safe, where there is not gun violence, where children are freely chosen.
And another thing I think that comes up in our spiritual community is the whole blueprint we're born with. And quite a lot of people say something will happen. They go, oh, that must have been in my blueprint. That was meant to happen.
Yes.
And then if we expand that out to, well, you fall pregnant and you're making that choice of whether you're going to continue with that pregnancy.
Yes.
And you've got one side of them would be saying, well, it's part of your blueprint and all that sort of thing. And I think people don't realise that we're born with a skeleton or an understanding of what we want to experience, but our choices also guide that. So it is still fluid.
Yes.
And that you still do have those choices to make of whether you want to continue on that path or go a different way, even with this whole abortion debacle that's going on at the moment. And I think for some people in our spiritual community, they'd be fighting in themselves, well, it's meant to be. They've fallen pregnant, so it's meant to be. And I just sort of wanted to bring that up as in, well, maybe it's not. We still have our freedom of choice. We have our free will. We're born with our free will to make those choices in the moment of when we're experiencing having to make that choice.
And that's what we would say. If a divine blueprint was that deterministic, you would not have free will. Your divine blueprint is not there to determine every detail in your life. As we have used the analogy of the blueprint of the house, you get to choose who resides in the house. You get to choose how you paint the walls, the furnishings you put in the house. And what this is a broader analogy of the choices you can make in your life. There are many decisions and timelines that can be held within your divine blueprint. The divine blueprint is the parameters in which these potentials are held. So while there may be soul contracts and agreements, some of these are indeed never fulfilled because of free will choices. They may be agreed to upon on the other side before you're born, but they're not always necessarily fulfilled. There are potentials. And let us say that where there is changes in relationships and circumstances, it can change which soul chooses to volunteer to come forward. And let us say this does not occur at the time of conception. It can under certain circumstances. In some circumstances, the soul comes through upon birth. Some may come in and out, attuning to the body within the mother's womb, and come in and out just to test what it's like. And then those first 3 months generally are a testing ground for the soul also. How does the DNA fit? How does it fit within their divine blueprint? How does it fit within what they are wanting? And spontaneous miscarriage, or miscarriage that is spontaneous abortion, is a test that has ultimately been chosen, from a soul perspective, sometimes from the mothers, not consciously, but unconsciously, on a soul level. It's an agreement by all the souls. A chosen abortion is just an agreement that is made more consciously. It's the only difference between spontaneous abortions and non-spontaneous abortions. Ultimately, there's still an agreement on all the souls.
You're reading my mind, because I went through 2 miscarriages, and I know those children are there in spirit, but you sort of look at it. I haven't thought about it from their point of view. Like for me, I was thinking, maybe I wasn't ready, or my body failed me, or whatever that was, but I didn't realize until this moment that it could have been something that they weren't comfortable.
Yes,
with.
It could be all about timing.
Mm.
Your divine timing. Your bodies will fall pregnant if you're capable of pregnancy. And they're not necessarily planned, even on a soul level. The body has the impulse towards something, and it has a different energy to the soul. There's an interface, certainly. But the body will have its own responses to something, and that is not necessarily consistent with where the soul is going. So ultimately, because the soul does not support it, the energy will go.
No.
So sometimes in the cases of those miscarriages, the soul did not yet choose to come through. And it was only a matter of timing, and they come through in the subsequent successful pregnancy. Sometimes what can occur is, depending on what the agreements are, is that there are changes. There may be potentials for a particular soul to come through for particular parents, and then the circumstances change, and therefore there is a review. Do not think that just because you've made these agreements before you're born that there are not reviews going on all the time on a soul level. And your higher self certainly oversees this. And so a lot of this is not conscious, although some of it can be.
Yeah.
So we will not allow religion or spiritual beliefs to determine what is right for any other individual. You may, of course, you're free to choose your beliefs and act accordingly, for that is your free will choice. Your free will choices should not infringe upon anybody else's. Your beliefs should not infringe upon anybody else's. Each person is free to believe what they believe. And like you and Vicky began in your conversation, why would you give your power away to something else that is external to you if it is not your internal truth? And so similarly, you cannot give your power away to someone else's truth. And this would be the case by adopting a belief system that is not true for you. Certainly, adopting a moral code of behavior that is not true for you, that is also giving your power away. And then it takes it further, for it is an act of control and violation to then infringe that upon somebody else, to force them to adopt either your beliefs or your code of behavior.
And then you've got the whole DNA ancestry side of things, where those belief systems are being activated in this whole discussion as well.
Yes. And this is why the souls may shift if there's a change in partners and a change in circumstances, because it is looking at the match, because you're taking on the ancestry of both parents, sometimes one more to the degree extent than the other, depends, but you're taking that genetic history on, and those ancestral patterns then that are held within you is why those are tested on a soul level as the soul may come in and out of that physical body. Do not think the soul is attached to the body.
From the beginning of the conception.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, in certain circumstances, like in light conception, where there is a very conscious conception, a very conscious process in choosing, that may occur. where the soul comes in from the very beginning. These circumstances are extremely rare. And if there was a light conception with that conscious conception, they would not be choosing an abortion in those circumstances. So the point is moot. It nullifies the other.
Yeah. And that we still have people that are capable of doing light conception in our day and age now?
That is a good question. There are potentials for it, yes.
Yeah.
Is it occurring? We will not answer this.
No.
Can it occur? Yes.
Might be for a whole other discussion, because that's a whole different realm. Possibilities.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So I think another thing that for me, like the sanctity of our bodies, was a process I've been going through personally through my marriage separation and my awakening, and getting to, I believe spirituality to me is going within and looking at oneself and seeing how I react to the world, how I react to myself, my environment. And sexuality is something I'd never really considered as a connection to my spirituality. And it's just like I've had the massive aha this morning. And relating to communication and sexuality. And it was sort of like, how do I explain it? There was certain things that were said within the marriage that cut down my communication within the sexual realms. But it's something I didn't fight against when it was put on me, and I just agreed with and went along with it. Then later on, I realised I was starting to resent my partner for putting that on me, and me not being able to speak my truth in that moment.
Yes.
But I was in the back room cleaning up to her, and just as these little nuggets drop in.
Yes.
And I went, oh my God, I allowed that because I chose it. It was something that I had taken possibly from past lives, don't know, but something about shyness and not speaking up, not communicating my needs. Was when he did lay that rule down, it was like I went along with it so easy. And I realised only in that moment, oh my God, I've been blaming him all these years for that.
Yes.
When it was actually something that I carried already, and I went along with it so easily. So it was like, and then I've realised now I don't have to abide by those rules. I've had this release of, and my term this week's been, I'm free to be me. So I can say what I want and I can verbalize. Now the verbalizing was what it was all around, was actually speaking it.
Yes.
And I feel now that I'm in a place that my next partner that comes along, I will be in a place where I will be able to say exactly what it is that I want to experience or share in my divine rights. So it's like, wow, these things that we blame others for, I had this awakening of, wow, sometimes it's already within us, and it's been accentuated by a partner or mirrored back to us by a partner for us to see it and see what we want to do with it.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because in the moment that you agreed with him, you gave away your power to him.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately what you resented. Because you are the one that gave the power away, you could always reclaim it as you have. And remember, if your voice is your power, and now being able to express what you want, you're able to reclaim your power, your personal power. And part of your personal power is your sexual power. Your sexuality is part of the sanctity of your bodies. So sexuality cannot be apart from your awakening. It has to be a necessary part of it. And yet here we are talking about those groups which would infringe upon bodily autonomy in relation to abortion rights or any human rights for that matter, have the greatest taboos when it comes to sexuality and sexual freedom. Whether being free to love who you love and be with who you wish to be with, or the shame that is placed upon the very act which creates life. This is another dichotomy.
The shame factor is huge.
Sexual shame is rife. And it is particularly placed on women. And it is something that is prevalent throughout Western societies and cultures. And we would say around the globe, you see these issues, some more than others.
Yeah.
But even in your Western cultures that are deemed to be freer than others, it is still rife within them. So you are placing the greatest sexual shame upon the very ones who are capable of giving birth, and therefore making them give birth, but then also shaming them for the very act which created that life.
Oh,
it does not make sense, even from a logical perspective, certainly not from ours.
And that's, I've been like this whole process. There's been other things that got me to this place.
Yes.
Especially in the last few weeks. But Bloom Festival was one I went to last week, about 10 days ago at Byron, out the back of Byron Bay, in a little place called Yukai. Yes. And it was about 200 people at this festival, and that's what it was all about, embodiment.
Yes.
And claiming back the rights to be free to be ourselves and be in our bodies and not in our minds all the time. Yes. We did a lot of workshops and we did dancing, and we did one process where it was we just had to be watched and be seen, and then you shared that moment and swapped around with them, and they were just so powerful to be actually seen for who you are.
Yes.
And not in a sexual way, it was just being seen.
Yes.
And I just found, like, in one of the discussions we got into, at what stage did our breasts and all these other sexual organs become not allowed to be spoken about or whatever? And I just feel it's a bit of a hangover for me that when our children are young, we're teaching them about being safe.
Yes.
So we do set that up to a certain degree about being safe. Your body's yours.
Yes.
You don't show yourself in public and all that sort of thing. But at what stage are we telling our children when it is safe to explore your body?
Yes.
And when is it safe to share your body?
Yes.
I think we set them up for the trying to keep them safe, but at no point is there a transition into that exploration of self.
Yes.
And there's a bit of shaming comes in there too, if you want to discuss that sort of thing, or I remember finding my brother when I was about 15, it's about 12, he's looking up rude words he'd heard on the bus in the dictionary, and I went, mate, you're not going to find that one in there. Like, it wasn't, not even going to say what the word was, but at what stage is there that process where we're removing the shame and removing the fear of our full physical bodies?
Yes. We'll give an example from Vicky's life. She has been particularly aware of sexual shame and the role it's played in her life. And especially having worked in child protection, she's also very particularly aware of safety for her children. So as they have grown, being two boys, so we're going to, because it's an example from experience, it'll only be an example of for her 2 boys, because she does not have any daughters, as you would know. Now, when boys are young, indeed when they are babies and they're discovering their bodies, just as they would be looking at their hands because they're amazed at their hands, then they realize that there's something down there. They play with it. And as any parent of young boys could attest, they play with it often.
Okay.
And so Vicky would always say, just to teach them, it's like, you can enjoy your body, but we go to private spaces to enjoy our bodies. So that was, if they're in the bathroom alone or in the bedroom, that's where they could enjoy their bodies. Now, while they're not doing anything sexual, it's like fiddling with something because it's there.
Yeah.
And there may be a discovery of some sensations that comes along with that, but then that is opening up the space to not shame what is going on. It's just about teaching that is private and you do not need to do that in public. However, there's no shaming around that. Now, what we want to say about that, because what's interesting about shame is that it lives in secrecy. Whenever there are secrets or whenever there is silence about a particular topic, that's where shame breeds. So it's not just the active shaming of someone for what they're doing. If you observe growing up that your parents never discuss sex and sexuality, there is going to be a sense of shame around it, a sense of taboo, just by the very fact that do not speak of it. And so therefore, notice expression, voice, very much also connected to sexuality. And so if they notice that there is no speaking about sex or sexuality, they are automatically indoctrinated into a culture of shame around sexuality, without even a word being said. So, of course, when it comes to girls, there's a whole raft of other issues. And of course, when it comes to transgender and non-binary people, there's a whole raft of other issues. Now, what we will say is safety is a big issue for girls in particular, in terms of sexual safety and bodily autonomy. And let us raise this in discussion that is about the sanctity of the body, because the body is often violated by those who the children would trust. Now, of course, they're
sworn to secrecy, so
there's shame around that.
Shame around that.
Yes. So here you see an interweaving of all these factors at play. And certainly there is little discussion around all of that. And so then you have that sanctity of the body violated in that sexual way. Then there's the sanctity of the body violated in control. And you see that in coercive control and domestic and family violence. And now you see that, and there was the case very famously and publicly aired in the United States, where one party was suing the other for defamation when she spoke about being a victim of domestic violence. Now, what this is doing is silencing those who've experienced coercive control and domestic violence. So here again is freedom of expression. And notice that when it comes to sheer numbers, predominantly women are the greater victims in terms of numbers of this, and not only just in sheer numbers, but in terms of the lethality of what and the violence of what they're experiencing. So to how violent, the degree to which how violent their experience is, and of course how lethal that experience is also.
Yeah.
So if women or any person cannot speak about their experiences, how can they reclaim their power? If your voice is your power. So when you speak to the forces within the collective, dark or light, these are some of the forces at play, those which would diminish anyone's freedom of expression, as well as the sanctity of their bodies. Now, this is a very old energy that belongs to the old earth. This energy will not move into the new earth.
Yeah.
And you're right in saying is that when the old is dying, it's like a wounded animal. It sometimes brings up the biggest fight, the fiercest fight. It can become vicious and unpredictable. Now, a lot of this is steeped in misogyny and patriarchy. These are one of these nefarious forces, if you will, for it is not about balance and integration. It is not about equality and equity for all. Certainly not about human rights for all. So if you think of it more as a collective energy, you don't need to personify it in any way. People, when they seek to personify these forces and by giving it a face and name, it gives it power. So you're therefore giving power to an energy that you do not wish to give power to. So what we would say is when you trust and put faith in the divine to lead you, to reclaim your voices and to reclaim your bodies, then you may be inspired to the actions that you're inspired to move into to help create this new earth. As we said before, for some that is by dismantling the old.
Yeah.
For others, it's in rebuilding, in building the new.
Yeah, creation. Yeah.
Yes. And so if you put your energies into that rather than focusing on what is evil, what is not, because what you focus on expands. So if you're looking for dark forces, you'll find dark forces. And yet, why would you do that to yourselves?
And that's been my journey too. Like, I just feel like I went from the depths of despair like 3 weeks ago, and
yes,
I finally had that, I don't know, it's cathartic, that release where I realized I'd hit the point that I could release everything from my marriage that's broken up, and I feel it was actually, I was releasing generational stuff as well in that moment.
Yes.
And in this guttural howl, and I couldn't believe what was coming out of my mouth and what my body was doing. But I knew at the moment I had to get it out. And I did. I allowed the process. I went for an hour and a half, this whining and howling, and my poor kids were like, oh my God, what's going on, Mum? You teach this. What's going on? Why can't you calm yourself down? I went, no, I need to get it out.
Yes.
And after that, it was like I was empty of all of that stuff that I no longer wanted to carry, and I was like this vessel ready to be filled with new.
Yes, exactly.
And through going to the Bloom and other interactions that I've had in the last few weeks, it's just been like I'm filling up with the light of where I'm going. It's like I'm finally carrying my own lantern of light to follow.
Yes.
And I remember I went for a walk on the breakwall, and I was walking along, and I thought I was like doing my supermodel walk, strutting up there, and I thought in that moment I could feel those always feel like a ripple in a pond of rose quartz energy emanating out from me. So I thought that's the sort of energy as individuals we can try and move towards, is standing in our own power.
Yes.
I don't watch the news and don't know what's going on around the world all the time. You get told the big stuff by all good-meaning people want to tell you what's going on. I hear enough that way.
Yes.
But I feel like I'm that beacon now that I've finally filled myself up, and I'm feeling like, wow, these last couple of years of absolute up and down, up and down, up and down have been so worthwhile for the joy I feel within myself now and about where I'm going and who I am. And it's just, I think with this whole thing, if we could all do that whole work on our individual, which then will send out energy to the collective as well.
Anything you heal on an individual level, as you already identified, you can sometimes heal on an ancestral level, and it's usually the case. And you are therefore healing on a collective level.
Yeah.
And can you see that where you were previously to where you are now, the power of your actions are so much more magnified now than they would have been before. And so while it is not that we are recommending that you don't take action until you are healed, that is not what we're saying, because if in that case you'll be waiting forever. But it is why it is important that you tend to your own healing and move through your own journey, even as you look to what behaviors are necessary or inspired for you to either help dismantle the old or create the new. And sometimes you will see a shift from one to the other as your energy shifts.
Most definitely. And it's been a journey, and going out within that balance, finding that balancing point. And it was finally, I think, by going back, I've been hiding away at home doing my stuff. That when I went back out in community again and went through those processes, especially at Bloom Festival, that was a lot of people. I had to go and take a few times where I'd just be on my own because I was picking up everyone's energy. So I had to keep going away into Nome. We're in this beautiful creek running through a big caldera of mountains and Mount Morning and all these. It was just a magical place. Beautiful. You could go into nature and do that, right? And then I was burning my resins and that sort of thing. But when I could step back in with the community, I was learning and so much more about myself through the interaction with the community. So yeah, it's been an enlightening journey, and especially the last month. And I do feel like there might be a lot of turmoil going on in our world.
Yes.
But like you were saying, it's that last kicking, dying energy, and that there's so much good will come out of it, and so much good we can find within ourselves as we work through those issues.
Yes. Yes. So 2022 was never meant to be an easy year in the sense of all this coming up. And that is very much because of that older energy coming up as well, even as you're receiving activations and energy upgrades and awakenings, and amidst all of that and still going about your daily lives. Now, it will probably, looking at the potentials, be like that until 2024. And where there will be a greater shift into the light then.
Yeah.
Now, it's not to say, oh, that's so far away, I'm going to feel bad about that. Or it's not to say that, oh, I can, be passive until then. that's not so far. I can just grin and bear it until then.
Yeah.
These are not the responses that we are inspiring you towards. We are saying this to be clear that it is a period that you're moving through, and life will present to you what is necessary for you to move towards. And if anything that is occurring within the collective, like we have spoken about, helps you to reflect. And this is the other service, that how it comes up within the collective consciousness, how we can serve you to look at this and say, okay, it is not happening in my country, but it's happening there. And if it's happening there, it can happen here, is one thing. But even if you're like to any certainty say it can't happen here, you would still look and say, these people are my brothers and sisters, and what affects them affects me. What affects one affects the all. If one is not free, no one is free. There is an old, as we said before, imperialist energy that is still dying.
Clinging on, yeah.
Yes. And those who benefited from that energy, that structure, are the ones that are still holding on. So who were the ones that benefited? Often the colonialists, often white, usually white, male, wealthy, who had access to social power. Now, not everyone benefits in the same way. And often what we see is these old structures defended by those who benefit even just a tiny little bit, because they'll cling on to that tiny little bit for their dear life.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see the white supremacist groups growing in number at this time.
Yeah. I also just thinking about when you said 22, like just looking at the end numbers of the years, like 22 is a mastery number, and then 23, you add that back, that's 5, the year of change. And so, yeah, I always knew this year was going to be interesting.
It's interesting is a good word. And 2024, you're getting an 8. So you're moving into the infinite and the abundant.
Yeah. Back into the cycles. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a new energy anchoring in 2024.
Yeah.
And while this energy, you do not have to wait until then to access this energy. It is inflowing and incoming if you're ready to access it.
Yeah, I believe so.
And your bodies are prepared constantly. As you would know.
Yeah, so thank you for your service in that area as well.
What we will say now, we're going to bring in a brief message from the Council of Light.
Okay.
And then we will allow our energy to step back.
Yep.
Allow Ariavea to come through. We're going to merge with the Council of Light to bring through this message.
Thank you.
Dear ones, let not the state of the world despair you. Let not the state of the world shackle you. Let not the state of the world disempower you. For your power is connected to the source, to the divine, to all that is. And while you may see many instances of your personal power infringed upon, even violated on a human level, know that no one on a divine level can do this for you. Let us say that many within what you would call the spiritual field would confuse one with the other. And because your divine power cannot be infringed upon, then diminish and dismiss what is occurring on a human level. This is not what we would say for you to do. We have all looked at injustices around the world, and we seek to serve all of humanity, to lift you up out of injustice into the consciousness of love that is Christ consciousness. And so let us present this bigger picture to you all. Did not Jesus lift up the very people who were set aside by society at the time? Was not his example one to include and be inclusive of all? Now, there are many of these examples by many of us. What we wish to share here is that when you go true to teachings, none of this will place upon anybody else their own ideas as a restriction and as a control. This sharing of ideas, as this even here is occurring, this sharing of ideas is then offered to others freely so that they may choose freely. And that is a very different energy. And so therefore we would say, step away and step back from trying to figure out what you feel about a certain area so you can figure out how you feel about someone else's injustice. If they are saying that their experience has been unjust, believe them, dear ones. Offer your common humanity with compassion. For let us say that those who would manipulate in the sharing of mistruths are so minuscule that your general rule of thumb would always serve you to share your common humanity with those who are saying with all their might, I mean, with every breath that they have, to say that they are being abused, disrespected, violated. And then stand back and say, ask yourselves, how may I serve? How may I serve this person within my broader community and society? How may I heal this within me so I can serve the healing for all? And then step back, commune with us, allow us to inspire you, and co-create together a solution for all. And so it is.
you some water.
Yes. Always a good idea. Well, I did not know that the council lines will be coming through, but
we've never had that visit. Yeah.
No, feel their energy come in. And for those who've been following on the daily messages and the weekly messages from the Keepers of the Keys, they have evolved in the sense that often it's a combined energy with the Council of Light. And sometimes they have been allowing more and more different light beings to take the reins and share a message. Like we've had Mother Isis, we've had Archangel Zadkiel, Mother Mary, and so it's been interesting. And I've spoken, maybe perhaps not in this forum, but that I've been going through an energy upgrade for 3 months, and that landed at the beginning of this month, and that was connecting more strongly with the Council of Light. So now I'm able to do this more and more, but I hadn't planned that or hadn't known about that beforehand, so it was a surprise for me.
Well, it was some of the posts that you've been doing, and Mother Isis was one of the ones on the 7th, if anyone wants to go back and see what we're talking about. But on the 7th of July was where we were talking about the Temple of Creation. And then the 11th was around our desires, and then the 13th was reconnecting with our bodies, and all of this was all linking into where we've gone today. And it's just, I just love the process, how I get my sparks of ideas and then I do a little bit of checking and go, okay, and it all unfolds here.
Look, I think embodiment, you were speaking of embodiment, I think it's so important. And when we have an embodied spirituality, and it's why I talk about integrating the two worlds, and really there's the integrating of human and divine. And I think possibly we weren't able to do this previously, or it was reserved for those who were masters, because the energy of the earth just wasn't supportive of it as the way it is now. And while perhaps in the past, we needed to transcend our bodies to get to where we needed to go, now we can be very much in our bodies and do that. And that actually is the process of what we are doing and moving through, so that we can be spiritual in our human bodies, be divine in our human bodies. And this is, for me, that this is I'm passionate about it, because everything that my work is all about is being embodied. So I love that we're having this discussion.
It's I just love that we can bring up any subject and hear some beautiful divine inspiration from our guides and the collective in the non-physical realms that can sort of help us see a bit more sense about what's going on and look at it from different points of view.
Yes, exactly. I think that's really great.
All right, so we've got Ariavea coming up. Now, we did meet them back in March. They came up and introduced themselves in March, and they are your Andromedan guides.
Yes.
They did at that time speak that they were working with you because of your work with balance and in integration.
Yes.
So do you want to say a bit more about them before we go into meeting them again today?
I will say that they're a group of 18 Andromedan guides. Yes. And they are part of the Order of Melchizedek. So they're part of that lineage as a group of teachers and light beings working to spread the light throughout the cosmos. And I have this card on my desk to remind me that I'm connected to that energy, and the Order of Melchizedek card. And so that, and because it particularly depicts the light, it's a reminder for me of that lineage. And so they're part of the broader collective energy of Aria, that is the Symphony of Light. So all the guides, ascended masters, angels, spirit animals who are connected with me and who work with me energetically as I do the energy work that I do. So they are part of that broader collective as well.
Beautiful.
Yes. So I will bring them through. It has been a few months since I've channeled them directly. And I'm curious to see what comes through. Okay. We are pleased to be here once more with you all.
We're pleased to have you back, and for some reason I'm tearing up. I don't know why, but anyway, just your smile, it's just like radiant. It was lovely to have you back again. You were last here in our March gathering, and we had some magical conversations then.
Yes.
So I'd probably like to open up with what is it you would like to introduce today for today's conversation.
Well, you've been having quite a conversation,
haven't we? Yes.
So we're happy to expand on some of these topics, and we think that there has been a great basis that has been laid that we can move into.
Right.
And what we will say as non-corporeal beings who do not or no longer have bodies, we would reiterate and reinforce all that you've spoken about the body and the human body. For it is the reason why you were here, dear ones. What we will say is that if you were not here to be in your bodies, you would not have chosen to incarnate at this time. And you could have remained with us in the non-physical, happily dancing along in a very joyous and loving place where there is not the contrast that you're experiencing now. But then you would have missed out on the opportunity to expand humanity's evolution as well as your own individual soul evolution. And it is the reason why you have volunteered, and we're eager to be here now, no matter what you may feel being in your bodies. And as we've said before, when it comes to those who identify as starseeds, it can be a bit uncomfortable being in your bodies. And while we know that we spoke about children who've come through differently, particularly in their first lifetimes in physical bodies, they can find it difficult to adjust to these physical vehicles. And so you may see that as, for some, developmental delays, for others as being autistic, for others for having sensory processing challenges.
Yeah.
It is all about some challenges in interfacing the soul with the body. For others, even again, it can be neurological, because it is all about how the body's chemistry interfaces with the light, the soul, the energy. And so therefore you may see this as a challenge. Now, for those of you who have incarnated many times, you old souls, many of you are still star seeds, but are old soul star seeds. In other words, you have had many incarnations upon this earth plane. You may still find it difficult at times to be in the body, for you still have strong remembrances of being free of it. But you may help those brothers and sisters who, and often some of them are your children, to adjust to their bodies because you've had more time to adjust to them and to this physical reality. So what we will say there is, it really is a journey of the body in this physical experience. And this journey of the body is about holding your light within the physical. When you know yourselves as light, you can remain in the light. But until you experience yourselves as light in the physical, then you are not actualizing it, physicalizing it in a sense. So it's all about how much light can you hold in your bodies, talking about sanctity of your bodies. This is how you can really turn your bodies into the temple. The more you light it up from within, the more holy it becomes, and then the more whole you are.
I love that. And actually, as you were saying it, I was actually almost seeing like a bright light within my heart space, just illuminating out right through my whole body and then out into the atmosphere around me. It was just like holding more light. Yep. I just lit it up right there and then.
A lighted heart is more powerful than anything else. And you will see that in some of the depictions of a sacred heart. You see the light emanating, and you can measure it with the electromagnetic field of a lighted heart being thousands of times more powerful than that of the brain. Love is far more powerful than fear. The light is so much more powerful than the dark. All you need to do is turn the light on.
And I can attest to that because that's what I've been learning all about through since my awakening, and that you can, what was the old saying, you can I can't think what it is, you can catch more bees with honey, or I don't know, but anyway, sending that love out, even to someone that's really challenged you, put you down, whatever it is, because they're on their path, they're trying to work through their stuff, whatever it is they're experiencing in their life. But I know that by sending love, it's quite often things resolve themselves. Instead of it butting heads further, the energy settles and an outcome is reached that's more suitable. So
we would take that further. Is where you see these pockets of challenge around the world, you can send your love there. So what Vicky likes to do when she sees people who are silenced or whose rights are infringed upon or who are experiencing any adversity, she sends them love. And often she sends the keepers there, and we would remind her she can send all of us there.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
And therefore, you are helping in a whole other way. Of course, you could not infringe, and we could not infringe upon anyone's free will choices. But if they are connecting to the light in any way, then they can connect to the power of our presence. And this is another way you can help in this. Spreading more light, spreading your love.
Yeah, I love that. So you can simply expand what you want to put out into the world by bringing in your guides, guardians, and angels, and getting them on board with your plan.
Yes. And let us say,
intention.
Let us say there are times where Vicky is guided to not do that because it, A, would not be received, and B, in that case, it will be a violation of someone's free will because they do not want access to that energy. And therefore, she respects that. And so you must respect that. It's not about imposing your will upon anybody else's. It is about spreading that love and that light so they may access it if they so choose.
And I think that's around what was the word, consent, like actually when you're sending it out for those that are ready to receive.
Yes.
So in your intention, creating that space that if it's for your highest good, please accept it. If it's not.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So when we last spoke, we did talk a little bit around, we danced around the subject of, through the starseed question, around autism.
Yes.
And also twin flames came up.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to expand into twin flames now, because it's kind of in alignment with our container today. And there's a lot of different information out there about twin flames. And I think that all of it is a truth for different people. So I'd love to hear what your guidance would be to us that are watching here today.
We're just checking what is in everyone's best and highest good for us to share at this time.
Yeah.
First, let us share the basis of a twin flame definition. Now, the twin flame definition is that you literally have half of your soul inhabiting in another person's body, and therefore you are meeting up with the other half of you when you're meeting up with your twin flame. So this is different from a soulmate relationship where you may still be two different souls coming from the same stream or same family of souls. And this can be friends as well as lovers, as well as children and anybody else in those relationships. So the twin flame is a very particular one, and by definition, you only have one. Now, it has certainly been in vogue, so to speak, to talk about twin flame. And while it has come up within the collective consciousness in the last few years, there has also been much misunderstanding. Now, also by definition, anyone who is your twin flame will trigger and catalyze great awakening, soul growth, and healing. Now, depending on where you are in your soul journey, often this translates as grief, trauma, and challenge. Now, what some people confuse as trauma bonds can be twin flames and vice versa. In other words, you can be in a twin flame relationship and it is not all lollipops and roses. There can certainly be trauma bonds within that relationship. Now, in those circumstances, we are very clear that at that time, that relationship is not in your best and highest good. And therefore, you are not meant to be in a, let us say, a fully actualized twin flame relationship. We want to make a difference, differentiate between the different potentials of twin flame relationships. It is all a matter of timing. And for some, the timing is not this lifetime.
Yeah.
For others, it is not even something that they have. They're not necessarily incarnated with a twin flame. So we are not saying in having the discussion of twin flame that everyone should be out there now seeking their twin flame. For that would be a false teaching. That is not what it's meant to illuminate or enlighten or share. What we would say is that there may be times where a twin flame relationship may come in and out of your life because the combination of that energy is too strong for either of you to hold. So it's very combustible. It can be very fiery. Too much can be all-consuming. For some, it can be obsessive. It's like seeking a drug, a high, but then they're on a crash course, just like any person suffering with an addiction would be. And so for those who are experiencing twin flame relationships in that sense, we would caution them to find some balance once more within that. For some, it is enough to know that there is a twin flame out there, maybe living very different lives, creating a balance within the oversoul of the two in that way. And you have agreed to have different experiences to advance the evolution of the soul more quickly in this way. So we would not overly romanticize twin flame relationships as they have been. As we said, they're great catalysts for healing, growth, and evolution. And not all accord to that rate of growth, healing, and evolution, for it amplifies the speed and the energy of that which comes through in that relationship. So if there is trauma bonding in a twin flame relationship, then it is indeed a crash course in trauma bonding. If it is any form or aspect of healing that is coming through in a twin flame relationship, it is a crash course in that form or expression of healing. So the energy is very amplified. So we want to be clear that not all are meant to have a twin flame relationship, and that is a good thing. It is not a bad thing to not be with your twin flame. Let us be very clear. And we would ask you to be clear also, is that if you're seeking a twin flame relationship, is to write down and be clear on why. Because if you're doing this for very romantic reasons, you may be best served with a soulmate, not with a twin flame. So be very clear on what you want, and do not confuse the definition of what it is that you are seeking. Instead of asking for the twin flame relationship, instead ask for the great love that you are seeking, for example. Because your twin flame will be on their very own individual journey. And if they are not ready, then they are not ready. And to force that, again, we're using dramatic language, but it is often the case. It'll be a train wreck, because it often is. Now, while it's designed to be so, we are not saying that all such strong, amplified energies are bad or wrong in any way. If you have called that in on a soul level, then that is what you are needing in this lifetime to fully awaken. Then that is what you need. There is not greater worth in a twin flame relationship over another relationship if it's all seeking your own healing, growth, and evolution. So we'll be on, firstly, clear on what it is that you're wanting and how you'll define those relationships, and move beyond what you have heard about them. Move into what is calling you within. For your soul will guide you, whether that is what is for you, whether it's necessary for you or even beneficial for you, whether you even want to know or not know. Let us say it's not always beneficial in knowing who your twin flame is.
And there is only one twin, like, because I always thought like the sparks divide and there would be multiple.
Yes. You're correct, dear one. Now, this is the other confusion.
Mm.
So we have gone with the traditional definition of twin flame. Now, by definition, a twin flame means that there is only one.
Mm.
Can there be, like you said, multiple sparks from the one candle that is your soul? Yes.
Yeah.
And let us be even more accurate than that. If you see your higher self as the great cathedral candle, in other words, it's tall and it's big, how many candles can you light from that one great big candle?
Unlimited.
Yes.
Mm.
So your higher self may overlight many different souls.
Oh.
And this you may see more as your soul family. And there is certainly more than you can comprehend from this perspective about how you all support each other.
Yeah.
So this is what you would call a soul family.
Yeah, I love that term better. Yeah, most definitely.
Let us say there is much to do. Let us recorrect the phrase. Much ado about nothing is the phrase. Much ado about twin flames.
Yes.
And if you are called to a twin flame relationship and is all that you ever had hoped for a relationship, we congratulate you. If you're called to any relationship and it brings through all that you wished for in a relationship, we congratulate you also. There is no one greater merit than the other. It is all what is about what is in your best and highest good in this moment, in this lifetime.
Yeah, I love that, because that's what I think part of, like, what I class spirituality about, looking at yourself. What is it you want to experience in a partner?
Yes.
If we're talking romantic partner, for instance.
Yes. That's what we would say.
Yeah, to sit down and have a think about that and write out your intentions. Exactly. and play with those intentions until you tweak it, because that's what I've been doing. And it's like every time I look at it, then I call someone in that comes in and does reflect that, and then I go, oh, I can add these extra things now.
Yes, you can.
And it keeps evolving.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And that's what that experience does. So therefore, when you have like a shopping list, and we do not mean to trivialize in any way.
Oh no, I have a shopping list.
Yes. What that
call
does,
it an experience list. What I want to experience.
We would call it an intentions list.
Yes.
These are your intentions about what you wish to experience in our relationship. And therefore, you can put those intentions in for what you wish to experience with whomever is in your best and highest good to be with. And what we would say is, you could even add the intentions for you to find who is the highest potential for you.
Yeah.
From where you are and where they are now. not what their potentials can be, because this is another mistake that people often make. They see someone's potentials and you fall in love with their potentials rather than who they are now.
Yeah.
So call in who is your highest potentials for a relationship. They'll be in your divine blueprint.
Yeah.
And then call them in. And you can be a driver in that, in terms of who will be in your best and highest good, who will be the highest potential, by being really clear in your intentions for what you wish to experience in that relationship. Because remember, a relationship is an opportunity for you to express yourself, to share love with another, to heal and to grow.
That it is. I'm on that exciting journey at the moment.
Yes.
Who knows what the world will present.
And be open to the journey and the experiences along the way. Each opportunity to interface with an individual soul is a gift, no matter if they're soul family or not soul family, twin flame or not twin flame.
Yeah.
Do not make one more special than the other when all are sacred.
And I think for some of us, if we did end up in a twin flame relationship, we wouldn't even realise it was a twin flame anyway. Like,
you would, if you were aware of it, by the degree of intensity in the relationship. They are intense and they can settle over time if people are meant to be in them long term. This is a small proportion in this lifetime. A small proportion. And so it's not as common as people would think. That degree of intensity is not in everyone's best and highest good. It can be very unsettling and destabilizing, and in fact can bring out many mental health and trauma concerns. So do not romanticize the idea of a twin flame and think that this romantic concept is a twin flame idea and then project all of that into a twin flame relationship. Be clear on what you are asking for.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to my intentions list.
Yes. A far wiser way to call in a perfect relationship for you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes. We spoke about lots of things last time, the scenes in the community and the fact that you're connected with the Order of Melchizedek.
Yes.
Do you want to talk more about that order in this moment, or where else would you like to go?
Let's talk about that. As we said, the Order of Melchizedek are a group of teachers and light beings here to spread light across the cosmos. And we work with particular groups of people and beings who are resonant with that energy and with those teachings. And as we said, we are resonant with what Vicky's here to bring through about balance and integration. And there is a soul lineage that we share through her Andromedan heritage that has brought the resonance between us. Now, in understanding this, you can then understand how we may, as a collective order, support and co-create with others in corporeal form to bring about balance and harmony, which is synonymous with integration. So when you can understand that there are many branches within the order in terms of where each of us may choose to focus within the spectrum of light, and how we wish to bring that into and express that into the cosmos. And so we have a particular focus on balance and integration. And so that is our particular focus. Now, it's not to say it is limited by that, but it includes that, is inclusive of that. When we work with others within the order, there is a broader tapestry of co-creation. And we can work with particular communities, such as the Essenes, but also communities elsewhere in other star systems as well. Now, we'll say that what the Essenes seeded and planted here on the earth is still bearing fruit today.
And I think actually at the moment it's like really strengthening momentum and resurfacing back here strongly for us.
Yes. Yes. There is a rising in the consciousness of that understanding. And let us say that this will continue to be the case. More and more will be shared. And it's not about only looking back, but it's about bringing back wisdom that was hidden and suppressed to be able to move forward into a future that fully actualizes all that was set in motion those thousands of years ago. For they held much wisdom, and they were great integrators of wisdom.
Yeah.
And in some ways, they were the preservers of wisdom upon your planet. For if you understand, the Order of Melchizedek was very active during the times of Lemuria and Atlantis. Now, as Atlantis fell, that wisdom dispersed throughout the planet, and the Essenes held the responsibility to integrate the wisdoms that had been dispersed from around the world.
And gather.
Yes.
I often see the word Essenes as essence almost. It's just like consciously Essenes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
I definitely. I quite often look at the word and think that's essence.
Yes.
Essence of our life.
The essence of being human and spiritual at the same time. For they were very balanced and integrated in their lives, in their both spiritual and human lives, and through community as well as individual freedoms, supported the weaving of both human and divine in their day-to-day lives. Yeah. So they were masters at fostering this. Now, let us be clear, because there were pockets of Essenes that were different from others.
Yeah.
So there were some who were more ascetic, who, like John the Baptist, eschewed the body. And there was a separation from the body. We are not speaking of those Essenes. We are speaking of the Essenes that Yeshua was surrounded by. Mother Mary, Joseph of Arimathea, Anna, Mary Magdalene, and so forth. They were a group within the Essenes who integrated body with spirit and were very active in bringing through this teaching. It is why Yeshua's teachings were very balanced and integrated. But when whole swathes of those teachings were cut out, it brought about the imbalance.
Yeah. And I thank them for those that were the scribes of that time too, like painstakingly rewriting every word to reproduce what they were gathering and making sure there was more versions available. And I'd be interesting to see what more surfaces and what's found of those original scribes.
Vicky spent many lifetimes as a scribe.
Vicky did?
Both before and after, for these very purposes, in preserving knowledge. But in many cases, the knowledge is preserved within your Akashic records.
Yeah. I feel I've had some lifetimes as a scribe as well.
Yes.
Didn't even realise I had a passion for writing till it came up in the cards one day. When I'll have a go, and I went, wow, I really do love that. And some of the terms I might use, and I think, and then I read that term like surface dwellers, and then I've now read it in a book, and I went, that's the term I use.
Yes. So in that case, nothing is really lost.
No, it's within.
Yes. So we would offer you the opportunity to ask one further question before we step back and allow your next guest.
Oh, very exciting.
To come through. And while we enjoy this conversation and could continue this, we know that we are not limited by time, but you are.
Well, I'm going to throw one of my trick questions at you.
Okay.
So I use this one with my guides sometimes, and Ari, and they always have a wonderful good old giggle. So I'm going to ask you, what is the greatest question I could ask you in this moment?
That is the greatest question.
Ooh.
So in one essence, we have already answered you, for that is the greatest question. But let us go to the spirit in which you have meant it so that we can come up with a response.
Yeah.
That is richer. The greatest question is for us at this time, for will change tomorrow. What is the purpose of our connection here on earth at this time? And what are we hoping to bring forth?
I love that. And what would be your answer?
Our greatest purpose, and we've spoken about balance and integration, but let us provide context to that. These are all outcomes of the consciousness of love. And we know the keepers speak of it as the consciousness of love. Others will know it as 5D consciousness, and we would not use that term. We prefer the consciousness of love or Christ consciousness. Now, the reason why the keepers, and while we are not speaking necessarily for them, but they agree with us in using the term consciousness of love is A, because it is descriptive than other terms, and B, does not carry any connotation of a particular religion. So while those of you within the spiritual realms more broadly would understand Christ consciousness and what that is, those who are still new to this language would confuse it with Christianity.
Yes.
And it is not to be confused with Christianity. It is quite distinct. Of course, there is some roots within it, but it is not rooted in the religion at all. The commonality is Yeshua's teachings, but how it is presented is very different. And let us go even beyond this, because Christ consciousness is not exclusive to Yeshua or Sananda as he is now known. It is known to the Buddha, Maitreya, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene. In other words, any ascended master has mastered the capacity to hold Christ consciousness within them, well, in human form. Mm-hmm. So it is going back further into the definition of Christhood as being the anointed one, rather than as being Jesus Christ. Yeah. So while he, of course, mastered Christ consciousness and brought it to the earth, mm-hmm. He is not, the Christ consciousness is not exclusive to him. He is, as Sananda, still bringing through Christ consciousness to this planet. But see how we've already gone into a discussion about what Christ consciousness is, whereas consciousness of love speaks for itself. So our highest purpose is therefore in supporting the anchoring of the consciousness of love here upon the planet Earth at this time. And the way that we focus this support is through balance and integration. How we are sharing it is through these discussions. How we are transmitting it, it's a broader transmission. There is much that we are doing on the other side of the veil on a collective level. And that is we more broadly as part of the Order of Melchizedek. And we work with the councils of light and the ascended masters and the angelic realms and all of us who form the tapestry of the divine to bring this through. And so it is a broader co-creation as we co-create with you in physical bodies.
Lovely, thank you. Beautiful way to end this section.
You're most welcome, dear one. We enjoy this conversation. We are always pleased to come through. We are always pleased to answer your questions. And we are pleased to, let us say, bring a broader understanding of what it means to be cosmic.
And we are grateful for you coming and spending time with us in this way.
You're most welcome, dear ones. From our hearts to yours, we send you much love.
And from our hearts to yours, we send that love back. Yes. This is going to be quite a long one.
It is. Much to talk about.
I know. There always is, and it's going with, like I said, not much planning, and look where we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to just take a few moments to connect with Archangel Gabriel, who's beginning to come through. Welcome, dear one.
Welcome to you, Gabrielle. So exciting to have you join our conversation.
I have been looking forward to this conversation and this opportunity to chat, to speak, to express, and to share.
Lovely. So we have, in honor of you, added the freedom to communicate as part of the container's name, because I always feel that you are one of the true energies that helped me learn how to communicate after my awakening.
Yes.
Well, that's when I noticed it. You've probably been always there, but that's when I picked up that energy. So thank you so much. Would you like to introduce yourself first? Because with you, there tends to be, sometimes we pick up on a masculine energy and then sometimes on the feminine energy. That's not a common thing to happen with all the other energies that we and the beings that we communicate with. So would you like to start there, maybe?
Let's. Now, if you understand masculine, feminine energy as an inward versus an outward energy, you can begin to understand that there's a different purpose in both these energies.
Yeah.
And in having a particular purpose, one may take on a more masculine energy, and having a different purpose, one may take on a more feminine energy. And then at other times, balance both. At this time, I've come through in a balanced form.
Mm-hmm.
So you may take me as you receive me, for some masculine, for some feminine, for some neutral, androgynous, non-binary. So we wish to share this from the divine perspective, a loosening of ideas of gender and what gender definitions are. For gender is indeed a social construct, even though, yes, there is an outward form of your bodies that is different. So let me say, it serves me at times to express outwardly as the messenger archangel that you know me as. Now, expression is an outward energy. So it serves me to come in a masculine energy. Now, what I will say is, it is not to say that I change bodies, for I do not have a body. It is merely the expression of my energy, and it's merely the masculine portion or part of my energy being transmitted in this way. And then there are other times for other people who may receive me in a more feminine sense and see how I change to a form more feminine energy, so you can understand the difference. And there's a softening around that. There is a reason why, and let me return to balance. There is a reason why my name can be both construed as female or male. That is part of the purpose.
No, I love that too, because we're all trying to integrate our masculine and feminine energies to find that balance point. And I think you're just a great example of that for us.
Yes. And can I say that when you can move beyond the construct of gender in these more rigid roles, you may extend beyond the definitions of feminine and masculine to that inward and outer energy as being more descriptive of that. Because as soon as you say feminine and masculine, you're talking about gender roles and more traditional gender stereotypes. Now, we understand that there is a shared basis of understanding when you speak of feminine and masculine. We will not wish you to be so tied in with those ideas of what is feminine and masculine that you would give up on the opportunity to expand into more and into a greater understanding of awakening from constructs within your social structures of gender. And people sometimes are very happy to do it in other ways and are proud of their awakening process and about releasing old constructs. And yet when it comes to gender, not so much. And so you have groups of people coming through who are showing this to you. Those who are transgender, those who are non-binary, and those who have various definitions for what gender is. And so instead, if you can say, I choose to express in this way. And it is in this way as it serves this purpose, and in that way as it serves that purpose, and how I wish to express it. There is your freedom of expression, dear one.
And for me, I've noticed that, like, once I left my marriage and I had to stand up for myself to do all the extra stuff that, you know, was normally done by my ex-partner.
Yes.
I had to step into that more masculine role of doing more of those types of things. And you can get to a stage where you stop accepting help from others because you want to, you can stand in your own power and do it yourself.
Yes.
And I feel that for me, that's where I found, I found a balance point for me where I was going too far into the masculine of standing in my power and not accepting help when it was offered.
Yes.
And out there doing and not receiving.
Yes.
So for me, and I have seen it in my work with a lot of other women where they have same story, but in the end it started to break them down because they kind of feel, well, why doesn't anyone help them when they're not realising that they're just standing in their own way.
Yes.
Through the masculine outward energy.
And isn't it interesting that in your society you would accept that women should do in giving of their free labor, in raising children and being the bedrocks of society so that others may do more, and yet you're calling that a feminine role? See how gender is defined very in an imbalanced way, that the doing outwardly is a masculine expression. And so in your description of you doing, that was a masculine expression, and then you were describing in a way that was imbalanced in your masculine.
Yeah, it's I'm just glad that I recognised it in others so that I and helped them through it. And then when it started appearing in my world, then I went, oh, hang on a minute, I'm doing that.
They were your mirror. Yes.
Yeah. So it was sort of almost like they gave me a lesson before it became my turn to step into that.
Yes.
That space of imbalance.
Yes. Yeah, what we would say from our perspective is when you can let go of these definitions of how you must be for these women, as you describe them, often socialized in a way that they must be the provider of all nurturing, all care, all doing, all labor. And that is never has been a definition of womanhood. Accept what has been imposed upon you by patriarchal structures. And we say that from our divine perspective, our higher perspective, as something artificially imposed upon you. It is not the natural way of being. For you are human beings and not human doings. And your bodies have a more feminine consciousness, for they are connected to the earth, to the consciousness of Gaia. And how you treat your bodies is often a reflection of how you treat women. And so you see the abuse of bodies as well as the abuse of women. Yeah. And then when you see something that is even more undefined from those gender roles, some would get angry because they are defying those gender structures within your societies. And people are afraid of that which is unfamiliar. And if human beings could understand that it is part of your physical brains and how they evolved, that you are afraid of that which is unfamiliar. If you would become more familiar with people who are different to you, you would be less afraid, and you would move more into the consciousness of love, therefore, and love everyone as they are.
And wouldn't the world be very boring if we were all the same?
It would certainly not fulfill any purpose whatsoever. For you're here to variously and infinitely express. And so why would you infringe upon anyone else's expression or what they would choose to do with their own bodies?
And that's the part of the revelation that I've been through in the last month, is that freedom of expression, freedom to be me, freedom to be me,
freedom to be you,
has become my war cry for over the last few weeks. It's like, right, that's what I'm embracing at this moment, freedom to be me. And I've been dodging starting up certain aspects of my business for years, and it's just like, no, I'm free to be me now, doing it.
Yes.
So it's
the freedom to be you is everything. It is fundamental to all human rights. The freedom to be you. When you look at it, that is the fundamental human right, the freedom to be you. And therefore the freedom to express yourself as you will. Now, we are not saying that to express yourself in a manner that is harmful to others.
No.
And from my perspective, I would say the fact that anyone would have to be policed in what they say is the travesty of the human condition, that others would seek their freedom of expression to be harmful. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, there's a reason for that. In other words, how would you like to be treated? You'd like to be treated with love, with compassion, with kindness, with respect. And how do you feel loved? You feel loved when you are seen for who you are. When you are heard. And accepted as you are. So to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted as you are, that is love. and you feel loved when you experience those things.
Mm.
So when you have anyone who infringes upon anybody else's right out of fear, not out of love, it is always out of fear when they are doing so.
Yeah.
And yet that fear goes beyond into a control and a violation of other people's rights. So from our broader perspective, it is the heart which will show you the way, the light-filled heart, a heart filled with that Christ consciousness that will guide you true. And so when you can understand that it is when you are true to you, free to be you, that you can then truly let go of any conditioning, programming, socializing, wounding that takes you away from yourself.
And the word self-judgment come up. We judge ourselves so harshly, and if anything, we judge ourselves harder than we would anyone else in our lives.
Yes, that is certainly the case, although for some they are so sensitive to shame and so intolerant of shame, they would deflect all responsibility of their behavior onto others.
Yeah.
So you see both extremes. And you see those who would take more responsibility for their behaviors than those who refuse to. And what we would say is somebody else's right to express in their bodies should never take away from your right. So if someone is speaking harmfully, that is not a freedom of expression. You could call that a right to do harm, and that does not make sense. When does someone have a right to do harm? Now, if you could take on and move into the understanding that you want to be seen and heard and accepted as you are, so does everyone else, then you would understand that anyone else expressing that does no harm to others then does no harm to you. And if you have an opinion about how they express, well, opinion's an opinion, does not mean anything. Maybe your perspective. You may even say that it is your truth, but it has no bearing on the matter. For you get to choose what you do for yourself, even as others get to choose what they wish to do for themselves. Now, when you understand, and this is the other confusion that people have, individual freedoms versus community responsibility, this is when you can understand that being free to express never means harming others. So there is a sense of community responsibility when you can look at what is in the greatest good of all and for all. And you need not get lost within that community when you have your freedom to be you. You can be free to be you and still belong to a community and share responsibility for the welfare and well-being of that community. So if these two maxims are always true, This is what will support the consciousness of love in the new earth, and is what you are all moving towards. The freedom to be you and to express yourself as you are. Connected to community, where you'll share in the communal well-being of all. That is unity consciousness.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think that's part of the teaching I'll be going out and doing, is what I've learnt and sharing that with others to see whether it resonates. Because it's been a huge journey. And I think there's some little nuggets of gold in there for others to go through and experience that. So I love that analogy of bringing it back to the community. Yeah.
Yes. When you understand that broadly, the whole of humanity is your community. Yet you'll have the micro within the macro. So you'll have your smaller communities of people with whom you resonate with, even as you are part of a greater whole. And then humanity upon earth is part of all that is. Yes. So it's up to you how you define community.
To me, community is like connection with others.
Yes.
In its simplest form, connection.
Yes. Yes.
You need to be connected to yourself to then connect to others.
Yes. And you could say you've hit the nail on the head, because what happens in your socialization as you experience wounding, even as you take on ancestral wounding, it is all a drive away from yourself, your true self. When the awakening process is a return to you, what is within you, what is true to you, what is your truth. Now, your true nature is love. And you are all children of the light. That is your true nature, your true self. So when you return to you, then you are embodying love, and you may share with love with others.
I think that's important. Like if we just say, look at a cheating partner or a husband sort of thing, quite often because we haven't received that love and they've gone out and cheated on you, for instance, you start to think, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong?
Yes.
And you're looking at yourself, but you didn't do that.
No, you didn't do that.
You didn't go out and perpetrate whatever it is that might have been perpetrated.
Yes.
It's a reflection of them, not you. And I think that's an amazing awakening to have, when you realise, I've got to connect back to myself and realise it's not under my umbrella, it was under theirs that it was created.
That is an example of taking on responsibility for another person's behaviours instead of only, let me rephrase, not only letting go of responsibility for another. For that is an example of over responsibility. For then when that is the case, when you are exhibiting a pattern of behavior where you take on more responsibility than is yours, to create balance, you will be paired with someone who takes less responsibility for their behavior. And so often they will project their behavior onto you, so for you to take responsibility for, because they would refuse to take that for themselves.
It's an amazing diamond that we're working on, isn't it?
So if you come into balance within yourself and take responsibility for you without taking on responsibility for others, then you can come into relationship with greater balance, where they also take responsibility for themselves.
Yeah. Mm. So much inspiration in the conversations we've had today. Would you like to add to anything that we spoke with? Because we spoke some pretty serious subjects throughout this conversation, and I just feel like there's something you would like to add to our previous words.
This is what I would add. I would concur with all that has been said. I would also share this. And while there has been a discussion of human rights, let me speak about the right to express freely. As you said, you added that in my honor. So let me speak to that. Now, where there has been a suppression of voices, particularly as there has already been given the example of women's voices, often children's voices also where they have been abused. And let me say, not just children's voices where they've been abused, but children in general. I mean, you can see in your society and cultures the maxim previously, and only a generation or two ago, children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Now, how are children going to feel respected, loved, if they are not heard? So I would say it starts from your children. As you allow them to be heard, often people would dismiss what children have to say as being childish. Well, of course they are children.
Mm.
And yet they have rich inner worlds that they wish to share with you. And if you shut them down at any age or stage because what they say feels unimportant to you, then what you are saying is that they are unimportant.
Yeah.
And that is a process of shutting down their voices and suppressing their voices. So at this point, I am going to transmit, and I am transmitting energy from my throat to yours. So you can receive a voice activation and a transmission of light through the voice. Because many of you, and looking at who will come to this content, all of you have been suppressed in some way when it comes to the voice, whether it's in this lifetime or past lifetimes, or most commonly in both. And so in that case, women have held this, particularly in the suppression of women and women's voices through the centuries. And what was previously dismissed as women's intuition and feelings as hysteria. Oh, there's a hysterical woman. She's crazy. And you still see this rhetoric today. When a woman is speaking out, she's crazy. She's unhinged. She's unstable. She's lost the plot. However, and these are the more kinder descriptions.
Yeah.
And abuse held at women who are speaking up and out. So in this transmission, know that you are here to reclaim your voices, even as you're here to reclaim your power. And as you reclaim your power, you reclaim your bodies. And you are free to express with it freely, with love and with consent. Share with another, as you would not wish to violate anyone else's sovereignty and autonomy, yet you wish to share with another. And that is what the expression is all about. Sharing with another, having that masculine energy transmitting outwards to each and every one of you. As you share outwardly, it becomes a beautiful flow in and out of two people's energies or more. So you give and you receive. You give and you receive. You see that balance and flow. And this is why there are times where my energy is in the balance. We give and we receive. So I will conclude by saying, enjoy your bodies, share in your expressions, honor one another, embody your light, and share your love. And as I conclude, I share with you my love for you.
So graciously received.
And so it is.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Wow, I'm going to have to listen back, I think, about 10 times for all of this. Yeah, wow.
Quite a transmission.
Yeah.
Still flowing through my throat. I can certainly feel that.
I could feel the energy like right through my body. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like,
yes.
I'm just going to sit in and bathe in that.
Yes. Well, we should bring in the keepers to wrap us all up.
I'm wondering whether we might have to do this in 2 parts, but anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, and to anchor. What a conversation you have had.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, we agree. We agree. There's not much more that we wish to add. We acknowledge and thank and are grateful for this grand co-creation and this conversation that has unfolded for you all. May all who come to it be blessed. Feel the love, the energy transmissions and the activations. And may we share with you, you may connect with each and every one of us individually as well as collectively. I know that we are never gone. If you call upon us, we will be there. And so from our heart to yours, we send you all much love.
Thank you, Afro. Oh, I don't normally get teary. I've been tearing all the way through most of this. Just that's joyful tears.
It's responding to the energy. Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for what has come through, and I too will have to listen back.
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling the energy strongly, and not all the words have landed, that's for sure. So yeah, that was what I feel is a beautiful transmission. And as we said at the beginning, made you connect with what moves you, what the love that you feel, what brings you joy, what you resonate with. And for the rest, you may let it all go. We are happy for you to be here and share in these conversations. And as always, I know that we are each sending our love to you all. And if you wish to submit any questions for any of our divine guests in the future, we certainly invite you to do so.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think I just wanted to mention too that we did the format a little differently, and I'm so glad that we did choose today to do it. We were guided to do it today, and yes. Wow, what a result.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you for holding the space.
And thank you for, wow, all that energy that you've passed through. I imagine you must need to go and rest now.
First allow the energy to dissipate.
Thank you so much, Vicky. And I look forward to what our August version will bring.
Yes. Wow. Wow. Yes. Sending everyone much love.
Thank you.